2:18 in the morning, if I got my time shift right?
Hey, John, good morning. Yeah, 2:18 in the morning, so late night / early morning over here.
Wow. I was actually looking at a map of the Big Island, which is where Kilauea, by the way, I practiced on the way home yesterday. After I so butchered it.
Did you butcher it?
Oh, God.
Oh, come on. You weren't that bad. You did a great job.
No, Marcy helped me out with it, thank goodness, because she speaks Hawaiian, as it were. But
Yes, I've learned quickly.
One of the things about the Big Island, to me, is there are huge chunks of the island that are reserves or forests, and in other words, they're national parks, which is really intriguing to me. I never realized there was that much of it, and Kilauea is right on one of these major parks, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Volcanoes National Park, and thousands of tourists come here to see because it's been an active volcano since 1983, and so you can go to the park and actually see the lava flow and get some really cool pictures. But what's happening now is that the lava is outside of the park. It's coming up through the ground in these residential areas that are about 25 miles from the actual volcano itself.
I was listening yesterday to one of our partners, Fox 2 Television, and their meteorologist was talking about this event, and he said that there have been over 200 earthquakes associated with this current eruption, and seems to think that might be part of the reason why these fissures are opening up where they are.
Well, it's far more than that. I mean, we're hearing it might be as many as 1,200 earthquakes, and most of them are really small. I mean, I haven't felt an earthquake here since I think Friday night was the last time I felt anything. Maybe there was one on Saturday, and so these aren't major earthquakes, but the ground is rumbling, and it's all a part of the process because what's happening is the magma from the core of the volcano is traveling underground, and so that's moving the rocks and moving the earth, and that's triggering these earthquakes.
Can you just tell us where you are in relation to where Kilauea is? And I've also been reading about the toxic gas. Is that just as much of a threat as the earthquake itself?
Yeah, so I'm about 25 miles away from where these fissures are opening up in the ground. 12 of them are now open. A couple new ones opened up overnight. And so I'm in Hilo, so this is where all of the hotels are, because where the eruptions are happening is a residential area. There aren't hotels there. So we're all staying in Hilo, and it's kind of business as usual here. The hotels are open. The international airport is open. And as for those toxic fumes, it's sulfur dioxide, and that comes from the lava. And that is actually a bigger concern for officials than the lava itself. I mean, of course, the lava is a major issue because it's destroying all of these homes and all of these other structures in these neighborhoods, and it could be an issue for quite some time. But as far as the impact of people living here on the Big Island, and at least this part of the island, the major concern is with those fumes, because if someone breathes them in at really high levels, or someone with respiratory issues breathes these fumes in, it could potentially be deadly at high levels.
I saw some video yesterday of I don't know what the proper term is, but a wall of magma crossing a street in a residential area and just inundating a car. I mean, the car was there 1 second and poof, the next thing it's just totally gone. Same thing happens with the houses.
Incredible.
Yeah, I mean, the houses, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, this isn't like a forest fire where you might be able to pour enough water on a house and perhaps save it, or cut the brush back. This magma just doesn't stop.
There's no way of stopping it. And yeah, that video you're referencing, this time-lapse video, you see this wall of lava crossing the street, and then it just devours that car. And then we're seeing this, happen to these homes as well. And firefighters are out there, but there's really nothing they can do. I may have told you the story of this guy who was about to go back into his house to see if he could save anything. His friend, who's a firefighter, came out of the evacuation zone and showed him a video of the wall of fire coming close to his house, and then the next image you see is of the house on fire. And the person who shot it was apparently a firefighter, and so he's standing there taking video because at that point there's just nothing that can be done.
Mm-hmm.
So far, no fatalities. I'm sure some of the rescue folks are suffering from those gases at the same time, though.
Well, they're taking a lot of precautions, though. I mean, they've been outfitted for, masks to protect themselves. The ones who are having to get really close are doing okay because, they know going in that this is a risk. And so there have actually been no injuries reported from this either and no major respiratory issues. It's also why they have this very wide perimeter set up, and they're not just letting people drive in close to the lava flow because they know these toxic gases can have such an impact on people's health. So they're keeping everyone really far away.
And maybe, Marcy, maybe you mentioned this, but how big of an area are we talking about that's affected?
I mean, this is just 2 residential areas. So this is, think of maybe, less than a mile area where this is happening. But the perimeter they have set up is multiple miles because it's just this huge circle they have set up around it because they don't want people driving in and getting too close to this.
Okay.
I'm sure there's some way of forecasting to some degree what is going to happen, but it seems to me it'd be a completely inaccurate science to be able to tell how long is this going to go on, how far is this magma, or these flows and these fissures, how many more fissures, and so on and so forth, right?
Right. No, there is no way to tell. This is what we keep hearing from the experts is that, they wouldn't be surprised if it stopped today. They also wouldn't be surprised if it continued for several more months. There is no way to predict how long it could continue, how many more of these fissures could open up, how long they'll continue flowing. So there are 12 of the fissures open right now, but for the moment, or at least at the last check from officials, there was no lava coming out of them. And this is what we've seen over the past few days is that, you'll see these huge lava flows and these explosions and the molten rock going hundreds of feet in the air. And then they'll all quiet down for a few hours. And it maybe, gives people a little bit of false hope because it seems like, okay, this could be it. It's finally stopping. And then it picks right back up again.
So I guess the bottom line is sooner or later, these walls of magma are going to hit the ocean. I mean, it's an island, for heaven's sakes. And there's no telling whether it'll get all the way to the ocean. No, okay.
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, because it could just stop. So, right now, there's no lava coming out of these fissures. I mean, the lava eventually just kind of hardens on its own. So it's not necessarily going to continue moving, but, it'll just stop where it is.
Interesting.
At some point.
I can't imagine the cleanup after all of this, too. Boy.
Yeah, I mean, once it cools off, you're basically talking, I mean, to get the roads reestablished, you're just going to have to blast through lava, molten rock, I mean, to be able to do it, I guess. Okay? Huh.
Well, and around the island, you see these lava fields where you can tell that this is where, there was an eruption at some point, and they don't do anything else with it. I mean, it just looks like a field of lava.
Marcy, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We greatly appreciate it.
My pleasure.